Acting despite fear is one of the biggest challenges we face when trying to achieve our goals. For many, fear is like an insurmountable wall, a barrier that seems impossible to overcome. When we are faced with something outside of our comfort zone, our brain instinctively tries to protect us. This protection manifests itself in the form of fear, insecurity, and often procrastination. But the truth is that it is possible to overcome, and there are practical and well-defined strategies that can help in this process. Today, I want to share with you a detailed, meticulous, and profound step-by-step so that you can act, even when fear tries to paralyze your actions. 1. Accept fear as part of the process. The first thing you need to understand is that fear is a natural reaction of the brain. It is not your enemy. In fact, fear is an extremely sophisticated defense mechanism developed over millions of years of evolution to protect us from real dangers. Think of our ancestors. For them, fear was an essential resource for survival. Feeling fear in front of a predator, for example, was crucial to prepare the body to fight or flee. This quick brain reaction was essential for survival. However, today, the dangers have changed, but our brain still reacts in a similar way. Situations like public speaking, starting a new project, or facing an important life change can trigger the same sense of threat, even if the danger is not physical or immediate. And many times, these interpretations do not match reality. The key is not to eliminate fear, because that would be unnatural. Fear is part of who we are. It is rooted in our biology. The key is to accept it as part of the process. When you understand that feeling fear is normal, it already reduces part of the anxiety. Accepting fear means recognizing that it will be present but does not need to dictate your actions. When we stop fighting against fear and begin to accept it, it loses part of the power it exerts over us. Instead of trying to ignore it or suppress it, understand it. Question it. Ask yourself, why am I afraid? What exactly am I fearing? Is this rational? Often just recognizing the reasons behind fear is enough to weaken it. 2. Break it down into small steps. The second step is to break your goal into small steps. One of the big problems when we try to face fear is looking at the magnitude of the goal as a whole. When we are faced with a monumental challenge, it is natural for the brain to interpret it as a risk. This generates paralysis, a blockage that prevents action. It is like looking at the top of a mountain and feeling that climbing it is impossible. But what many people forget is that no one climbs a mountain in a single step. Every journey is made up of small movements. Every brick is placed individually in a large building. To avoid this sense of blockage, take your goal and break it down into small tasks. Think of a large building. It is not built all at once. Each brick is placed individually, step by step. Similarly, if your goal is to speak in public, start by speaking to a few people. Then practice in front of the mirror. Record a video for yourself and observe where you can improve. Watch it several times, adjust, correct. Then maybe speak in a small meeting or at a gathering of friends. With each stage overcome, fear decreases a bit. The feeling of achievement, even if small, builds confidence. You begin to realize that you are capable, that it is possible to move forward. 3. Visualize the positive outcome. Another crucial point is positive visualization. This technique, although it may seem simple at first, has a profound impact on how we face challenges. The human mind has an extraordinary ability to imagine scenarios, and the way we project these mental images directly influences our emotions and behaviors. When we visualize a positive outcome clearly and in detail, we are actually training our brain to believe that this scenario is possible and, more than that, probable. When visualizing your goals, allow yourself to dive into the details. It's not enough to just imagine that everything will go well. You need to visualize each step of the process, anticipate the small challenges, and especially see yourself overcoming each one of them. Imagine starting that project you want so much, going through the initial difficulties, finding creative solutions for the obstacles, and finally reaching the expected result. Think about how you will feel when that happens. Imagine the relief, the satisfaction, the pride of having achieved what you planned so carefully. The richer this visualization, the more real it becomes to your brain. Scientific studies show that the brain does not clearly distinguish what is imagination from what is reality when these mental images are well detailed. This means that by visualizing a positive scenario repeatedly, your brain starts getting used to the idea of success, reducing the resistance and fear that would normally arise in the face of a challenge. You are essentially training your mind to accept success as something natural, and this reduces the impact of fear. Furthermore, this technique also helps to identify possible difficulties before they actually happen. By visualizing the path, you can anticipate obstacles and already mentally map out strategies to overcome them. This way, when they actually arise, you won't be caught off guard. Your brain will already be trained to handle them. This mental preparation reduces the feeling of threat and increases confidence, making it easier and more natural to act despite fear. Therefore, take a few minutes of your day for this practice. Find a quiet place, close your eyes, and imagine with as many details as possible the result you want to achieve. Feel the positive emotions that will come with this achievement. Imagine the environment, the people around you, the conversations, the celebrations. The more realistic this mental image, the more powerful it will be to break fear barriers and push you into action. 4. Set deadlines and commitments. The next essential point to act despite fear is to set deadlines and commitments. Often, procrastination is a reflection of disguised fear. We delay that important task or that challenging project not because of a lack of will, but because the fear of failure makes us want to avoid discomfort. When we delay, we create a false sense of immediate relief, but in reality, it feeds even more into the cycle of anxiety and insecurity. The problem is that the more we postpone, the bigger the fear becomes, creating an even greater psychological barrier to overcome. However, when we set clear deadlines and commit to them, we create a sense of urgency that pushes us to act. Setting a deadline does not just mean picking a random date. It is necessary to choose a deadline that is realistic, but also challenges you to move. If you tell yourself that you will start that project someday, that day never comes. The brain tends to procrastinate tasks that do not have a well-defined time limit, but if you determine that by the end of the month you will take the first step, this creates a temporal mark that your brain recognizes as real. This clear definition of a deadline limits the tendency to delay indefinitely, forcing you to organize your actions and set priorities. Even more powerful is the act of publicly committing. Sharing your plans with other people creates social responsibility. When someone knows about your goals, there is a natural desire not to disappoint that person. This external commitment is an important psychological reinforcement because, in a way, you feel watched and encouraged to act. Imagine, for example, that you want to create a YouTube channel. If you simply keep that desire to yourself, it's easy to postpone. But if you tell friends and family that you are going to launch the first video by the end of the month, the sense of responsibility increases, and this pushes you to act, even with fear. Additionally, it is worth reinforcing these commitments through visual reminders. Placing notes in visible places, setting alarms on your phone, and setting weekly goals are strategies that help the brain stay focused on the established deadline. These small visual reminders serve as mental anchors, reinforcing the commitment you made to yourself and to others. With this, the sense of urgency is constantly renewed, preventing fear from growing back and paralyzing you. Setting deadlines and commitments works as an antidote to procrastination driven by fear. By creating a sense of responsibility and urgency, you condition your brain to act, even when insecurity tries to paralyze you. This discipline generates concrete results, and with each small progress, your confidence grows, gradually and consistently weakening fear. 5. Act quickly, the 5-second rule. Moving on to the next point, we have the famous 5-second rule, developed by author and speaker Mel Robbins. This simple but incredibly effective rule is based on the concept that when an idea pops into our minds, we have exactly 5 seconds to act before our brain begins to create excuses to protect us from discomfort. This short time frame is crucial because the human brain, in its quest for safety and protection, tends to avoid situations that may generate discomfort or risk, even if that risk is only psychological. Think about how many times you had a positive impulse, like the idea of starting a project, getting up earlier, making an important call, but within seconds your mind started to rationalize. Better do this tomorrow. I'm not ready yet. Maybe it's better to wait a little longer. This hesitation is natural because the brain tries to convince you to stay in a known comfort zone where risks are minimized, even if that means indefinitely delaying your dreams and projects. The 5-second rule works precisely as a pattern breaker. As soon as the idea arises, you count from 5 to 1 in reverse, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and act immediately, not giving space for fear to grow or allowing procrastination to settle in. This countdown is powerful because it interrupts the cycle of negative thinking and forces your brain to focus on immediate action. No wonder Mel Robbins claims that this technique has already helped thousands of people worldwide overcome inertia and make courageous decisions. The secret lies in simplicity. You don't need complex tools, expensive training, or extreme motivation. You just need to decide to act within those 5 seconds. And when this becomes a habit, you begin to realize that fear loses strength because it has no time to grow. That mental space that used to be taken up by doubts, fears, and justifications is replaced by concrete action, generating real results. 6. Reduce the scope of failure. Another crucial aspect is the idea of reducing the scope of failure. Many times, the fear we feel is not actually of the action itself, but of the consequences we imagine if something goes wrong. The brain is an expert at creating catastrophic scenarios, even if they are unlikely. A simple mistake during a presentation, for example, is imagined as something that will ruin your reputation forever. But in reality, how many times have you witnessed someone making a mistake in public and still respected and understood that person? Normally, we are much more understanding of others than of ourselves. To reduce this fear, ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? Write down these possibilities and then reflect on each one. Are they really that serious? Many times when you put it on paper, you realize that the worst-case scenario is not that terrifying. Moreover, by imagining what you would do to overcome each situation, your brain feels more prepared to handle possible adversities, which reduces the sense of danger. Another interesting strategy is to fragment your attempts into smaller and less risky parts. Instead of launching directly into a gigantic project, which can generate paralyzing fear due to its size, divide it into smaller, more manageable stages. For example, if your goal is to launch an online course, instead of committing directly to creating all the content, start by planning just the outline of the classes. Then focus on recording only the first class, and so on. By reducing the scope of your initial effort, the fear of failure decreases because the impact of a mistake is proportionally smaller. You are not putting all your emotional and time investment into a single attempt. You are building it little by little in a safe and controlled way. This approach allows for adjustments along the way. If something does not go as planned, the loss is minimal and the correction is simpler. This gradual method not only diminishes the fear of failure, but also increases your ability to adapt because you are constantly learning and correcting your path. In the end, what seemed like a great challenge is built piece by piece, and the fear of massive failure never materializes because you dealt with small obstacles one at a time, always adjusting and improving. Reducing the scope of failure is a practical way to trick fear. By making the consequences smaller and more manageable, you avoid paralysis and gain the confidence needed to keep moving forward. With each small success, your self-confidence is strengthened, and fear loses part of its power. 7. Learn from failure. Now let's talk about a point that few people consider but is extremely powerful: learning from failure. The fear of failure is one of the biggest blocks to action, but it is in fact an incredible teacher. When something doesn't go as planned, you have the opportunity to understand what went wrong, adjust your strategy, and try again more intelligently. The most successful people in the world failed many times before achieving success. They understood that each mistake is a brick in the construction of something greater. The difference between those who achieve and those who remain stagnant is not the absence of failures, but the ability to use them as learning experiences. This understanding completely changes the way you face challenges. Instead of seeing mistakes as proof of incapacity, you begin to see them as a natural stage of growth. Great inventors, successful entrepreneurs, and elite athletes failed countless times before reaching the top. Thomas Edison, for example, conducted over 1,000 experiments before creating the electric light bulb. When asked about his mistakes, he replied that he hadn't failed, he had simply found 1,000 ways that didn't work. This is the spirit of someone who learns from failure. Each attempt is an opportunity for improvement, a chance to adjust the path and get even closer to the goal. Changing your perspective on failure also reduces the fear of trying. After all, if each mistake is a learning opportunity, there is no definitive failure, only steps toward success. This way of thinking is liberating because it eliminates the weight of perfection. You allow yourself to act, test, adjust, and try again, understanding that progress is built on small victories and continuous learning. This makes the path lighter and the journey more rewarding. The fear of failure stops being an insurmountable obstacle and becomes just one more step towards success. Over time, this change in mindset strengthens your resilience and increases your ability to act, even in the face of complex challenges. When you see failure as a step towards evolution, it stops being a terrifying monster and becomes just another rung on the ladder to success. 8. Surround yourself with positive support. Finally, but no less important, is the power of surrounding yourself with positive people. This point may seem simple, but it is profoundly transformative. The environment we live in has a direct impact, often subtle but extremely powerful, on our emotions and decisions. When we are surrounded by negative, pessimistic people who constantly place barriers on our dreams, the tendency is that this behavior influences us, even unconsciously. Phrases like, "That's too difficult," "Is it really worth trying?" or "I don't think it's for you," are seeds of doubt that are planted little by little and, over time, grow into deep insecurities. Now imagine the opposite, a supportive environment, surrounded by people who believe in your potential, who encourage your dreams, and who, even in the face of difficulties, say, "Go ahead, try one more time." This type of environment not only encourages but strengthens the resilience needed to act despite fear. When you share your goals with positive people, they not only support you but also help you see possibilities where you might only see obstacles. They celebrate each of your small achievements, reinforcing the feeling that you are capable and on the right path. Studies on support networks show that the quality of the relationships we cultivate has a direct impact on our ability to overcome challenges. When someone encourages you to keep going, even after a failure, it creates a psychological effect of positive reinforcement. The fear diminishes because you know that, regardless of the result, there are people around you who recognize your effort and encourage you to keep going. Moreover, being surrounded by positive people stimulates something even deeper, a change in perspective. You begin to see challenges not only as obstacles but as learning and growth opportunities. Instead of fearing failure, you start seeing it as part of the process. Positive people help you see that failure is not the end but a necessary chapter in any successful journey. Therefore, choose carefully who is around you. It's not about excluding people but prioritizing those who contribute to your emotional growth and your courage to act. The closer you are to those who push you forward, the easier it will be to make bold decisions and face fear with confidence and determination. Sharing your goals with those who support you is an act of courage and a true shield against negativity. By following these steps, acting despite fear becomes not only possible but natural. Fear, as intimidating as it may seem, is just a natural reaction of our brain, a way to protect us from the unknown. However, when you face it head-on, armed with the right strategies, you discover that it's not as intimidating as it appeared. Each step taken toward your goals, even with fear present, strengthens your ability to act. And gradually you realize that fear doesn't need to disappear for you to move forward. It can be there, like a silent spectator, while you choose to keep walking. Over time, this practice of acting despite fear becomes a habit, a kind of emotional muscle that is strengthened with each new attempt, with each small advance. You begin to understand that fear is not a sign to stop, but a reminder that you are exploring new territories, growing and developing. It becomes almost an indicator that you are on the right path, that you are stepping out of your comfort zone and allowing yourself to evolve. Therefore, do not wait for the moment when fear will simply disappear because it is part of the journey. Instead, focus on improving your ability to act despite it. That is the true power, the courage to move forward, to build your dreams step by step, even when insecurity tries to stop you. And when you look back, you will realize that what once was an insurmountable obstacle has become a mark of overcoming, a testament to your strength and determination. Because, in the end, it is not the absence of fear that defines success, but your ability to move forward even with it present. If these tips helped you see fear differently and make braver decisions, don't forget to leave your like to support the channel, and feel free to comment below. Which of these steps will you start applying today? Your opinion is important and helps inspire more videos like this. Consider the comments section as a space for mutual help and growth. And if you are not yet subscribed, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content like this. Together, we will keep moving forward, one step at a time.